Welcome to AgriTalk and thank you for keeping it KTN Farmers TV. Today we are talking about food safety, and with me today is Dr. Joyce Thaya, who is the head of Veterinary Public Health, State Department of Livestock from the Directorate of Veterinary Services. Welcome to the show, Dr.
Thank you, Philip.
When we talk about food safety, what is it exactly?
Food safety in general is the assurance that once food is eaten, it will not cause anybody any problems. It will not cause illness or any other problem.
Okay. Why is it important for us to have this conversation about food safety?
Because food is life. Everybody must eat food. And if food is not safe, then it is not food. So food has to be safe for it to be considered helpful to anybody who is eating the food.
Okay. Are there any food safety rules that we need to follow?
Yes, there are food safety rules that have been set. One of them is that you have to be clean. If it is not clean, then it is not safe food. Number two is that it has to be cooked well. If it is not cooked well, then it is not safe. The equipment that you use and the services that you use also have to be clean. Then the water or any raw material that you are using has to be safe.
Okay.
In general, if we do that, then you have safe food.
Okay. And what's the difference between food safety and food security?
Food safety, like I have said, is the assurance that food will not cause any harm.
Okay.
Food security is the assurance that somebody will get enough, consistent, and safe food. Yeah.
So when we talk of food safety, where are we as a country?
We are not where we ought to be, but we are not where we started. One, the consumers are becoming aware of food safety, so many are increasingly demanding safe food. So, and there are regulations. The government is also increasing monitoring of food safety. The people who handle food, that is the food business operators, are also becoming increasingly aware of food safety. So we have a long way to go, but we are not where we started.
Okay. Can we also say water is food?
Yes, water is food because we consume it. So water is food.
Okay. When we're talking about food safety, most of our food that we buy it from open air markets. How can we guarantee that this food that we buy from these markets or informal markets are safe or is safe?
The guarantee for food is by everybody. The person who is bringing the food to the market should ensure that this food is produced safely from the shamba. It is transported safely to the market. At the market, the environment is clean for that food to be safe. And as you buy it, you also handle it safely. If it is food to be cooked, you cook it safe. If it is food to be eaten raw, you clean it.
Okay. And are there any toxins that occur naturally that can contaminate food? And if yes, how do we mitigate these contaminations?
Yeah, there are toxins that occur naturally, and some of them may occur in food. There are toxins that occur in animals, like a snake has toxin. There are toxins that can occur in food. If we talk of like cassava has toxins. If we talk of datura, it has toxins. Then there are also toxins that are produced naturally and they contaminate. They're not in food, but they can contaminate food and cause harm to people. An example of this is toxins produced by fungus, like one of them is aflatoxin. So they are toxins that occur naturally and they have a food safety impact.
Okay. We had talked about the open markets and the informal markets. What are the rules or rules of engagement when it comes to managing an informal market?
An informal market should be managed. One, if it is the county government or the institution that is setting up the market, it should ensure that they provide all necessary infrastructure to ensure food safety. One, clean water. Two, facilities like toilets should be provided for. And three, limiting dust in the places where it can contaminate food, then the people there should also be able to appreciate that they can also make food unsafe. If they are sick, they should make sure that they don't handle food. And of course, the consumer also, when you're going there, you should make sure that even the container you are using to carry your food is also safe.
Okay. Talking of the consumer going to buy food from these markets, what does the consumer also need to look at so that he at least is guaranteed that whatever I'm buying is safe?
The consumer should look at the food itself. Is the food clean? Is the food rotting? Is the environment where the food is safe? The person who is selling the food, how are they handling themselves? Because if somebody is spitting around and touching their noses, that is likely to cause unsafe food. So you look at the environment and the food itself and the persons who are handling the food.
Okay. We have seen efforts by the county government to build modern markets in most of the towns, but still, people will still don't want to go to the modern market. They prefer the open market where people come and put their food on the lay their food on the ground for us to buy. What do you think is the logic behind this, that we prefer more food outside than in our formal markets?
I would think that many people buy on impulse.
Okay.
So if the food is inside the market, somebody may not see it and may not buy it. But if it is on the roadside, somebody is likely to think, oh, I needed some tomatoes, so they buy on the market.
Okay.
That is my thinking.
Okay. There's also been this notion that food in the open market is cheaper to food maybe in informal markets or in supermarkets. Does price determine safety?
Price may not determine safety because the price may be set because of the infrastructure you have. If I'm paying rent, the food may go slightly more expensive than the person who is on the roadside where they are not paying rent and other infrastructure. So that may contribute to the price of food. But the place where the food is can contribute to food safety, because if it's on the roadside, there's dust, there are vehicles passing, so that can contaminate the food. Whereas maybe inside the supermarkets or inside enclosed markets, some of those problems may be limited.
Okay. When it comes to regulation, who is supposed to regulate or check some of these markets and some of these places that we buy food, and ensure that also the food that is in there or in that market is safe?
Regulation of food is under different government agencies. And the construction of markets, there are standards for construction of markets, which will include all that is required to ensure that the food is safe. So in the construction itself, aspects of food safety are taken into consideration. Two, there is also the county governments who have their laws pertaining to markets. There is also the Ministry of Health, whether at the national level or at the county level, who also have standards and laws that should be applied or complied with to ensure that food is safe.
Okay. Let's say I've gone to the market and I'm now home with the food I bought. What procedures do I need to follow before I eat this food? Ranging from fruits, vegetables, even meat.
Foods, once you get home, where you bought the food is not necessarily clean, particularly if it is unwrapped food. So food should be cleaned, food that is cleanable should be cleaned, and more so food that is eaten raw. It should be cleaned, that is number one. Number two, the equipment that you are using, you should make sure that you use clean equipment. And number three, a mixing of raw food and cooked food. If you are using a cutting board or a knife for meat, then you should not use it to cut vegetables, which will not be cooked.
No.
So the equipment that you use, the water that you use at home, you should make sure that the water is safe.
Okay.
So the plates and everything that you use Your hands, when you go to the toilet and you come and handle food, they should be clean.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the food we buy on the streets. Um, Cooked food. The muturas that we buy on the street, the nyama choma we buy on the street. How safe is this food?
Uh, Safety of food depends on a number of aspects because the hazards that can be in food can be microbiological, that is bacteria or fungus, and that most of the times will come from contamination. There could be other hazards, chemical hazards, which we may not be able to see and which may come from water or from the environment. So the food in the street, when it comes maybe to bacteria, and this may sound a bit controversial, if the food is eaten hot, that mutura is right from the jiko to your mouth. When it comes to bacteria, it may not have bacteria. But then the water that has been used, if that meat has any chemicals in it or that maize has any pesticides in it, that is a chemical hazard, which may not be removed by the heating or the cooking.
Okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to cooking, how well do we need to cook our food?
We need to cook our food safe. Most of the bacteria that can cause problems will be comfortable anywhere around maybe 5 degrees to about 50 degrees centigrade. Of course, we don't take the temperature of our food all the time, but when we cook food, we should, of essence, cook food properly and good time to cook thoroughly. And we know when food is cooked thoroughly. We should do that to ensure that the food is safe. And then after you cook, you should not hold it at those temperatures where bacteria can grow. And normally, bacteria that can cause problems will grow from anywhere between 4 degrees, that is the temperature of a normal home chiller, to about 60 degrees, that is where food is starting to boil. So any temperature in between is likely to be unsafe because bacteria can grow there.
Okay.
So you either eat food immediately after you cook it, or you cover it well, and once it cools, you put it back into the refrigerator if you have, or you cover it well and eat it soon.
Okay. Um, uh, from the feed we keep to our animals, does what we feed our animals also contribute to ensuring that the meat or the milk that we have at the end of the day is safe?
Yes, it does. The cow will produce milk from the feed it is fed. The chicken will produce eggs from the feed. If the feed is not safe, it is likely to cause problems with the animal product that comes from that particular animal. So yes,
And are there diseases that can be transferred from animals to human beings?
yes, there are diseases that can be transmitted. In fact, it is said round about maybe 70% of all human diseases will have their origin in animals. And that is why it is important to make sure that animal that is being slaughtered for food is also healthy.
They also say the current pandemic we are facing, the COVID-19 pandemic, was a zoonotic disease that was passed from animals to human beings. Why was that? Is it that this food was not cooked properly, or what exactly might have happened?
Zoonotic diseases, it's not just cooking, because there are some diseases which they affect animals, and if you contaminate even your hands or or your utensils can. But in this case, what is said, I'm not an expert in that area, but
Okay.
From a professional point of view, if that animal has a bacteria or a virus that can cross over to human beings, then it is likely to happen. Bacteria, viruses, and all other microorganisms, they keep on changing all the time, what we call mutation. So you can have one virus today, which is not causing problems to human beings, but tomorrow it will mutate, it will change its genetic makeup to make it a virus or a bacteria that can cause problems with man. So probably this is what may have happened.
Okay. So what do we need to know, or what do we need to do to ensure that any products we get from the animals is safe at the end of the day before we consume?
One, the farmer needs to take care of the animal, because food safety concerns start right from the production.
Okay.
So the farmer needs to produce their animal safely. If they are using medicines, they use them the way that they are supposed to be used, and it's in the label.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have to keep the animal, before they use that milk, there is the indicated withdrawal period, that you do not consume that milk until maybe 3 days. If it is that meat, once you give medicine to an animal, like 28 days or whatever days indicated on the label. So farmers should take care of that. The people at the slaughterhouse should make sure that the water is clean and the hygiene is good. If it is at processing, that they take care that also the water, the handling, the equipment are also clean. So it is right from the farm. That is why the term used farm to fork,
Or farm to fork.
or grass to glass.
Okay. Or grass to glass. That is
Yes.
maybe in the case of milk.
Yes.
Awesome. Let's talk about, let's go back to formal markets now. Let's say I've visited the formal market. Things are arranged neatly. What do I need to know while I'm buying my food to also make sure that what I'm buying is fresh and what I'm buying is safe? Because it's not a guarantee that everything, as you had said earlier, in a formal market is safe.
True. So 2 things that you should check. One, or maybe not true. One is the food itself. How is it? How is it presented? Is the packaging broken? Is the packaging clean? Is it dirty? So you look at the food itself, then the information that is given on the label. And it is very important that food producers should give necessary information on the label for a customer to make informed choice. One, you look at the expiry date or sell by date, because this is the assurance that the producer gives that up to this date, my product is safe. After this date, I cannot assure that it is safe. Also, there could be some of the components of that food that don't agree with you. For example, if I'm allergic to peanuts, and I look at the label, and the label indicates that it contains peanuts, so I should take care. That's also a food safety issue. I should take care that I don't buy that product. So everybody should look at the label, read the label, look at all that information, because it's supposed to tell you a story.
Okay. So I should I should just not go to the supermarket and pick stuff and put them in my trolley. I know, men, we most of the time don't read those things. We just pick, put on the trolley, and you go home. So for our viewers, I hope you've had that. You'll have to look at your labels before you buy food. Another question about these formal markets. There was a story that went around some time back that they also use preservatives. Uh, was it legal, first of all, to use that preservative on meat? And what dangers would that have caused?
There are chemicals that are allowed to be used in food, and they are legalized in the country, and they are used at specific times. In the processing of food, let's say that sausage, there are some chemicals that are used, if it is preservatives or colorings, and they are allowed. But if you are using a chemical not where it is supposed to be used, and that will be fraud, because you are using maybe to prolong the shelf life or to make it appear different from the way it is, that is food fraud, and that is criminal. And the danger when it comes to food safety is that some of these chemicals may be used not in the concentrations that are allowed. It may be a legal compound that can be used in food, but when you use it out there, you may be using it in concentrations that are not safe.
Okay.
Number two, in the labeling, somebody will indicate, I've used this as a preservative. But if you put it in a product and you do not label that, then you're likely to have somebody maybe allergic to that compound, will get it and get sick. So that is fraud. Maybe you also want to use it to prolong the shelf life, to keep a product that is rotting looking safe. So That is criminal, that is wrong.
Okay. Are there laws and regulations governing
Yes,
food safety and such regulations?
yes, there are laws and there are regulations. One, the Kenya standards for every product indicate what should be used on what product. There are also laws, public health laws, meat inspection laws that say what should be used where and in what concentration.
Okay. So who implements some of these laws? Who are the implementers?
There are several government agencies that implement food safety laws. And the main one, I would say the mother, is the Ministry of Health, because the responsibility for food safety when it comes to regulation is first and foremost Ministry of Health, because food affects health. Two, there is foods of animal origin. The Directorate of Veterinary Services has a role because of what we say that many diseases of animals can get into human. So the Ministry of Health, there are standards that would affect food safety. So also Kenya Bureau of Standards would come in, and many other government agencies because of their mandate. If it is the people who do agrochemicals, the way the chemicals are used in the field, they should take care because that also has an impact.
Okay. Okay, Doc, let's take a short commercial break, but we will be back shortly to continue with this conversation. For our viewers back at home, we are taking a short commercial break, but we will be back in a few.